The upcoming release of Grand Theft Auto 6 has an impact greater than you might realize, and it's not just about whether the game will be great or even meet expectations, but even still, can you even say that GTA 6 will deliver on that? There's a lot of speculation and analysis on GTA 6, but I wanted to dive deeper into two key questions and look at things a bit differently. And the first is, will GTA 6 be good? And how does GTA affect things more broadly? And so let's tackle that first question first, which is, will GTA 6 be good? And I think that what a lot of people miss on this is that there's just such enormous pressure on this video game being good. The expectations are huge, and there's so much pressure from the company, from the developers themselves, and has there ever really been a video game that has had this much money on the line, with this much money put into the video game? Now, whatever the number is, do you really think that that's not going to affect the development of this game? I think that it's such an anomalous event. It's such a weird event compared to other video games. I mean, even some AAA games that are very expensive to make, they have these huge budgets. Grand Theft Auto 6 just is a little bit different with how much money is on the line, with how much this game probably costs to make. How does that affect things? But I think it goes beyond that because there are so many people's careers on the line with this, right? I mean, if you are just a general programmer or artist, you have a really significant incentive to make this game really good, or the people that are managing this project or the executives of the company have a lot of incentives to make this game good, or to at least financially perform well. And it's not just about making your money back, because I think that Grand Theft Auto has this weird anomalous situation where it kind of almost doesn't really matter how good the game is because it's just got such hype regardless of what's in the game. But the real thing is the huge amount of money on the line over the long term, over the time of beyond just making your money back, because it's about how much money do you make from GTA Online? How much money do you make in future sales on the PC or in future console generations? Or overall, the long-term viability and health of Grand Theft Auto, right? If you create this amazing experience, the next Grand Theft Auto game or the next Rockstar game will benefit from this. But if it doesn't do as well, if it disappoints a lot of people, that puts pressure on the next game in the series, in the next Rockstar game. But in the end of the day, what are people actually expecting out of this game fundamentally? This game is anomalous in the sense that the hype train is so high for this game. There's a certain group of fans that will just love this game no matter what happens. It really doesn't matter the criticism in a lot of ways. So when I look at that, I have concerns. I have questions that make me a little bit more, cautious than I think some other people have, where they have these huge expectations given the previous reputation of the video games that have come before that, or the amount of money that's been spent on this project. And I think one thing that is possible is that you have a safe story. And I think that in some ways people might question this, but I think about it in this way. When you look at this story, right, it really kind of seems to focus on this Bonnie and Clyde dynamic, which also is kind of more like this focus on these heists. And once again, if you look at Grand Theft Auto Online right now, what is the multiplayer game based on? It's based on this heist mechanic. So it's almost like the story is designed with the GTA Online component in play, right? I mean, this is almost this similar story to GTA 5. GTA 4 is very different than GTA 5 from a story perspective. It's a little bit darker, but you almost see a rehashing, a retreading of GTA 5's story, which is the whole bank robber story, which is a little bit easier of a mechanic and an easier dynamic to sell in the online multiplayer. I mean, even when you look at GTA San Andreas, Vice City, GTA 3, they kind of did things a little bit differently, and the same with GTA 4. And so when I look at GTA 6, the story perspective seems very, very, very familiar, very similar to GTA 5, which is focusing on a mechanic in a story that centers around something that would feed into GTA Online naturally. And so when I look at that, that seems like a safe story. But the other thing too is I think that there's a lot of concern from a lot of people about this lack of edge with the game. Does the edge actually help you make money? In some respects, it doesn't. I mean, I think if you have all this money on the line, right, you want to have just enough edge to please your fans, but going into territory of pushing the limits, that puts you at risk. You don't want to get this pressure from sources that would hurt that revenue stream with so much money on the line, right? There's so much money. So you want to have almost just enough edginess to please your fans, but not go beyond that. And it's such a different dynamic and world compared to the older GTA games. I mean, when GTA 3 came out, there was none of these expectations that you have now with GTA 6 or even GTA 5. And there was a lot of controversy around these original older Grand Theft Auto games. And Grand Theft Auto kind of had more freedom creatively because it wasn't this huge thing at the time. to kind of push those limits. And of course, there was a different cultural dynamic and all those other things. And so when GTA 3 was made, it was made under a different set of circumstances from a pressure perspective, from a financial pressure perspective, but also culturally and expectations and all those things. I'm sure that they obviously wanted to make money with Grand Theft Auto 3 or Vice City or San Andreas, but when you have multiples, more money on the line, so much more risk and pressure, I just feel like that does not support making an edgy game. That does not support pushing the boundaries of doing commentary on things politically or doing intense humor. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but when you think about the relative risk, it just doesn't make sense. It just seems like you just go far enough to placate the fans, but you don't go beyond that because that puts the money at risk. So that's like a concern of mine because the original Grand Theft Auto games, which is what put Grand Theft Auto on the map because of this huge push of edginess, of this huge innovation of the video game. And that is not the same environment that you see right now. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 6 is created under a completely different lens from a money perspective, from a pressure perspective, and I just wonder how that affects the creative process. And then of course, beyond that, recent events have not necessarily been the best for Rockstar, even if they haven't necessarily been in control of some of these dynamics. So you saw the release of Red Dead Redemption 2 Online, trying to make that something as big as Grand Theft Auto Online, and there was a lot of over-monetization, and I'm not so sure that Red Dead Redemption 2 met those same expectations that the company had. Have they learned lessons from that, or will you see this aggressive push with GTA 6 Online? Because I think that, like I said, there's a lot of pressure, so maybe there is a scaling back to ensure that revenue in the long term, but who knows? But also you have the GTA Remastered trilogies, which I know that they were worked on by a different company, but there was still probably an approval process behind that, and so that disappointed a lot of fans. There's kind of just these two events, Red Dead Redemption 2 Online and the GTA Remastered trilogies, that are not necessarily the best recent data points. And of course, beyond that, you have certain key figures leaving the company, which puts the creative vision at risk. So that's from a storytelling perspective, that's from a game direction perspective, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is going to be bad from the things that I've listed, but they're concerns, right? Will GTA 6 be good? I think that it's probably likely to be great, but I think that expectations are just so immense, and there's a lot of dynamics to make me think that it's not going to necessarily be as innovative as people think. I mean, when you look at some of the innovation in Grand Theft Auto, there seems to be this huge amount of push on the graphics. Okay, what actually is the game actually going to look like with the release on consoles? Because even with Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5, you saw downgrades from the trailers and things like that. And so you have all this work put onto these specific details, these graphics, and I think that's great, but how much impact does that really have on things? I mean, how many people actually notice that? I mean, it's not like we're jumping from this PlayStation 1 era to the PlayStation 2 era. You're really going from a smaller jump, and you have all these crazy details, like people have pointed them out from the trailers, like the bubbles in the beer bottles, or just some of these kind of reflections and lighting things, but how many people are actually noticing that without watching a YouTube video that's over-analyzing the trailer? And how much does that really affect your gameplay experience? I mean, it's nice to have detailed graphics and all these small little things, but does that really change anything? And I almost think like the things that would excite me the most about like updated Grand Theft Auto would be AI features, interiors where there was more of an immersive world, or there was more immersive AI with the law enforcement, or there was more detailed AI NPC routines, or there was more fun gameplay mechanics to explore. And there's probably some of that within the game. How much of that innovation is just hype train from a lot of people, and how much of it is real in the end of the day? And I think that like a lot of people, they assume because of this huge budget, because of this extraordinary pressure, that GTA 6 will innovate a ton. But I mean, is that really the case? They might not necessarily have to innovate. I mean, why does Grand Theft Auto 6 have to innovate? There could be a short-termism with that doesn't necessarily support innovation at all. I mean, it could just be a slightly upgraded version of Grand Theft Auto 5. So you have all this money put into the project and you wonder, okay, I mean, does that money actually buy you anything that's going to be crazy and innovative? And I just don't think that just because you have this huge budget and this huge expectations that you'll see these crazy AI dynamics or whatever. I mean, who knows? No one really knows, but it's just something to consider. And so now I kind of want to go on to the second point, which is how will GTA 6 affect things? Because I think this is in a lot of ways the more interesting question, because I think Grand Theft Auto 6 has this huge impact on the video game industry that a lot of people seem to be missing. And I think the first thing is that this huge budget is one component, because we don't have the exact figures, but it's quite amazing to see how much money is probably spent into Grand Theft Auto 6. And what does this huge budget give you in terms of quality and innovation? I think that's a big, important question, because I think a lot of people, when they look at the amount of time and money that's been put into Grand Theft Auto 6, they assume that it's going to be this amazing experience. It's going to be this innovative experience. But how can you really say that? Are you sure about that? Because that money might not necessarily be used for total innovation. And also, just because you spend a bunch of money doesn't mean that the money is used in the most optimal terms. I mean, you could be very inefficient with that allocation. So what does that really mean? I mean, it is possible, but in a way it represents how much innovation and quality can you get by spending a ton of money on a video game. Honestly, when I really look at the video game industry in so many ways, I don't think necessarily that the video game innovation is directly tied to money. I mean, I think that helps. If you have a higher budget into the video game, I'm sure that really helps, but I think that innovation in a lot of ways is not necessarily tied as much to money as people think. I mean, maybe with some things like graphics, but different gameplay mechanics and stuff like that, I think that's just a focus. That's a strategy versus throwing more money at it. It's going to give you this more innovative game. I think it's not necessarily the case in my opinion. I think the other thing too is that GTA 6 represents this huge cultural component to gaming. And with standards breaking down from a lot of AAA games, I think that the making or breaking of Grand Theft Auto 6 means a lot for gamers, even at least more hardcore gamers, where it represents this moment of what is the next step for video games. Because if Grand Theft Auto 6 does really well, or it innovates and does these crazy things, it raises the bar in terms of what gamers expect from video games. But at the same time too, if it doesn't innovate that much and it's just this slightly upgraded version, I think that this represents some cultural watershed moment with the future of the next generation of video games and what that means, especially with how much money is on the line. And I think the other thing too is that this really shows us the culmination of the ultimate hype situation, where if you look at so many people that talk about this video game, there's just immense amounts of hype. And I think that some of this hype is way overblown, where people are expecting that it's going to have high quality results because Red Dead Redemption 2 was great or Grand Theft Auto 5 was great. And then of course they're assuming that there's going to be all these crazy features and all these innovative gameplay mechanics because they're hyped for it. And I think that in tandem with this, whenever the game does release, there's going to be huge amounts of hype from influencers. Just kind of leads to this, in my opinion, weird watershed moment of ultimate hype, unless the game somehow disappoints, where the level of hype will be so intense that I think almost any form of criticism or critical analysis with this will be kind of lost in just the amount of hype that you see with this video game. I mean, you even saw this with so many other video games in the past, whether it was Cyberpunk or some of these other games where criticism was really not welcome. And I just don't think that that's the greatest idea ever, where you can't really criticize video games. And so this hype, especially from streamers and YouTubers and stuff like that, I think is really going to be this interesting moment of the hype cycle, and whether or not you can even criticize these games where this is like this cultural component with everything. And I think the other thing too is that, I think there's probably a big question about privacy with this game, because especially with just some of the dynamics that are going on, Grand Theft Auto, depending on especially how edgy the game is or how things play out, could really be this weird watershed moment of gamers basically giving up their privacy to play the game, or other dynamics like that. And this includes conversations around privacy, data integrity, and then, depending on how that might go with some of these ID verifications and stuff like this could be this moment that really pushes society in one direction or the other, which basically means that, like, let's say in a hypothetical situation, you had to show your government ID to play these video games. Maybe that would be a huge rejection. There would be a huge rejection amongst gamers, and that would seriously hurt the sales of Grand Theft Auto. Or maybe because so many people want to play Grand Theft Auto because of this hype cycle, it conditions people to basically just give up their anonymity on the internet. And so then this kind of leads to this snowball effect with other dynamics on the internet. So this is, I think, a bigger concern, and who knows how it will play out. We just don't know what can happen. But depending on how edgy the game is, or how much controversy it brings up, or how certain privacy dynamics and stuff shake out in the time between that, this could be a huge moment and could change gaming and the internet and things more broadly. So I think this could be a huge moment. And of course, I think it affects the broader console market, because while there is a lot of people on consoles, there's definitely a lot of people that don't necessarily have consoles that want to play Grand Theft Auto. And you haven't really reached this huge marketing cycle yet for the game. And so the real question is, will the people that don't have consoles go out and buy consoles to play Grand Theft Auto? Because I think there's a lot of people that will go out and play Grand Theft Auto even if they haven't played video games in a long time. or they play video games but they don't have the newest console, are people going to go out and buy the consoles? And this is a big question, especially when you see console prices raising because of tariffs and the economic situation. And so this affects things like Grand Theft Auto, and especially too, what is the overarching price of Grand Theft Auto? And so I think a lot of these dynamics affect things because that affects how many sales Grand Theft Auto will get in general. And of course, depending on the economic situation and all those things, it affects how many people will probably go out to buy a console or buy the new PlayStation Pro version. And so that affects the broader console market because, of course, you would have a higher install base of people with those consoles, or you have a less of an install base. And so that will affect, in my opinion, future innovation, because if you have a less of an install base for these games, then it puts more pressure on the games that come out after Grand Theft Auto to do well, or it puts less pressure on them. And then because there's a higher install base in the console market, maybe it's easier to create new and innovative games or games with better graphics. And so I think Grand Theft Auto is a watershed moment, especially for the broader console market, depending on how well it can convince people to buy a console that don't have it, or how that shakes out with tariffs and the economic situation in general. And so I think there's a bigger component with all that. And so when you look at all this, Grand Theft Auto 6 represents something so much bigger than I think just being a great video game. You have this effect of the broader console market. You also have this just cultural moment of what this game represents for a lot of gamers in terms of quality, in terms of what the future innovation of the video game industry is, in terms of the future of Grand Theft Auto, and of course, just video games in general. And I think the hype train is just so huge for this that it's really hard to say what's going to happen. But I always try to be very cautious about this because once you play video games for quite a while, you've probably been burned from video games before. And I don't think any video game is immune from that. I think a lot of people got burned from Cyberpunk 2077, and the hype was crazy for that game. I think people just assumed that that game was going to be awesome. And so, will Grand Theft Auto 6 be good? I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure the game will be great, but will it meet the expectations for a lot of people? Not so sure about that. And the real question is, what is that money and all this energy and effort actually going to give you in terms of innovation, in terms of these new dynamics? You have to remember that, in a way, they are limited by the consoles in terms of what they can do. And so there could be downgrades from that. There could be only so much you can do because of the limitations on the console hardware. And so I think it opens up a lot of these questions about what will happen with Grand Theft Auto 6 and what that means for the broader video game industry. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens and to see how Grand Theft Auto 6 will affect video games in general.